Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 7th Discovery Workshop. As you enter, you should be muted, but if you would like, please change your name so that it reflects your name, your title, your organization. We're going to get started in a couple of moments. Let everybody gather. As we go throughout our session today, as you have questions, we'd love to see them. Just put them in the chat. We collect them and we work with the panelists afterwards to answer them. In the case where we have some extra time, we may pick one to go through with the panelists here today, but we want to maximize our time with our panelists today. And so just appreciate, just use the chat and we will take note of that and we will gather your questions and work with everybody to get those answers for you. So welcome. Thanks for being here. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay. So my name is Candy Castellanos, and I'm here with Ariel Sullivan, and we are the co-facilitators for this big 2-year initiative. And we're going to just spend a couple of minutes this morning, this afternoon, wherever you sit in the United States or elsewhere, just going over a very high level review of what this initiative is. We're going to talk about what this series is, what this Discovery Workshop series is, and what that means. We're going to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to get started. And so as you enter, thank you for joining us today. If you can change your Zoom name to reflect your name, your title, and your organization, that would be great. I'm going to share my screen. And get us going. All right. So welcome. We are here today to talk about compostable product designers, converters, and manufacturers. And this is part 7 of now a 13-part series in support of our 2-year initiative, which is improving the circularity of compostables and compost. And so this project is a whole system strategic planning initiative. And what that means is we are working across the U.S. compostables and composting systems, bringing everybody together with the goal of improving the whole system. And so big picture, imagining a future where there's a cohesive and seamless collaboration across all the organizations that are part of the U.S. composting system. And so this loop is our project graphic, and it's just a reminder that everything is deeply interconnected. And the intention of this project is to create a shared vision and a common purpose with clear action plans based on the work that everybody is ready and willing to do together. Our project is guided by an amazing steering committee. We've got over 30 individuals from 26 different organizations across the country working with us to not only support this effort with the discovery workshops, but all these discovery workshops lead to a 3-day intensive future search strategic planning event. And so this is our guiding group. We have been blessed with an amazing group of partners. This project is uniquely funded. It is funded through a shared funding model. These are our circularity partners. So these are the different organizations that have helped us launch and are helping to bring this initiative forward. There is always room for more. So if you're interested in supporting the work that we're doing, please reach out. You'll have our emails in the chat throughout the session today. And so what is this? What is this a part of? And so this whole systems 2-year initiative is about strategic planning and about large systems change. And so it's about involving and engaging pioneers from all across the system, bringing everybody together to create that shared vision, a collective roadmap toward optimizing the circular economy of the U.S. composting industry. And so this work centers, but is not limited to food contact compostables, and the strategic planning event is going to be guided by the future search model. And so when we talk about circularity, what are we talking about? And so for the U.S. composting system, what that means is that the intentions of compostability are realized for compostable packaging and organic materials, and that the end products that are produced are able to be put back into meaningful use. So our steering committee has put a lot of thought and intention behind the intentions of this project. And so it's a broad cross-sector with the intention of supporting an inclusive whole system circularity model for the health of the composting industry that maximizes the environmental benefits. It's improving collaboration and coordination, improving information flow, directing more food waste to commercial composting facilities that create value and confidence for all stakeholders, and it's shifting stakeholder behavior to mitigate contamination and the cost of contamination that's linked to non-compostable food contact packaging. And so these are all of our hopes and our intentions as we work on this project. The project has 3 pieces. And so you are experiencing the first piece. So we're working with the whole system on a discovery workshop series. And the idea is to start with the piles and work backwards all the way through, and giving panelists representing a cross-section of that particular stakeholder group the opportunity to tell their story about what's happening for them, what their reality is, and their opportunities and their challenges. These discovery workshops are leading up to a 3-day Future Search strategic planning event that's in September in Denver, Colorado. And then at that event, we will have, at the end of the event, we'll have a common ground agenda with action plans. And basically in October through next year, we will be facilitating activation of that strategic plan.
Yes, and wanted to just put a couple of resources in the chat for you, because we just spoke a little bit about the event itself, and we're currently sharing the wait list for folks. If there is interest, if there are people that have found their way to these workshops and are curious and want to be involved, please let us know, express your interest, and we're going to be making sure that there's an adequate representation from each stakeholder group, and really go from there in terms of who we extend invitations to. So that is in the chat, and you also see the YouTube link in the chat with all the recordings from the past discovery workshops. So we are at number 7 today, and we started with as Candy said, working backwards from the piles. About halfway through, we added creating quality compost and large-scale applications. So the end users of compost. So this is improving the circularity of compostables and compost. So that has been a new addition based on our discovery process. And we will be continuing through about every 2 weeks on Thursday at this time, leading up to September for these discovery workshops, gathering data, helping to better understand the challenges from a system standpoint, collecting that data, and using that data in the event as well. So that will be fed forward. And here's just a list of all of the folks. So it's a cross-sector, multi-stakeholder initiative, cross-system, seeking to collaborate and build stronger lines of communication flow between all these different points in the system that are seemingly fragmented at times. So please share this with others and continue to come. And yeah, happy that you are here today. So we're going to get into the actual panel with our product designers, converters, and manufacturers panelists. So this is number 2 of our packaging group. And we had our material suppliers 2 weeks ago. So we have Megan Jorgensen, Sustainability Maven from Eco Products, Lynn Dyer, Chief Sustainability Officer from Pactive Evergreen, John Salvador, Director of Sustainability Stewardship from Georgia Pacific, Nate Schultz, Director of Sustainability from Inapac, Rich Cohen, CEO with Elevate Packaging, and Blair Michael, Circularity Coordinator, True Advisor for Better Earth. So I'm really happy to have these folks here today. We're going to be spending 2 to 3 minutes per person, per question, and we will go through question 1 all together and then move to question 2. And Candy, I think Candy mentioned if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. We are going to focus our energy on the panelists and hearing from them. And if there is additional time, we may pick a question or 2, bring it into the room if we feel like it's a really good conversation topic. And the questions that are not answered, we will do a follow-up Q&A. So please, let us know where your head is at and what comes up for you in terms of questions. And just a heads up, our next discovery workshop will be the end users, the creating quality compost and large scale application on the 11th of July. And I will just put, I guess, one more link in the chat before we get started, sharing lots of resources with you today. But the RSVP for the Discovery Workshop series, if you have not, if you have others you want to share this with, please share the link and we'll get them signed up. And without further ado, I think we can start with the first question. So I'm going to put this question in the chat and I'm going to read it for you. And then we're going to start with Megan. So question 1 is, as part of introducing yourself and your organization, describe the types of packaging your company designs and or manufactures and the typical scale of distribution.
Yep. Thank you for having me. So hi, everyone. My name is Megan Jorgensen. Happy to be here today. I'm the sustainability maven for Eco Products. We make food service packaging with meaningful environmental benefits, meaning we make food service products that are made with renewable resources designed for composting. And this is the largest bulk of what we do and our biggest focus. We also make products made with post-consumer recycled content to reduce the use of virgin plastics and support recycling infrastructure. This is less than 10% of what we do, so a smaller fraction of that. And then also very new to us, which is very exciting, we will also be launching food service products that are designed for reuse in closed systems in the fall. We are a certified B Corp, and to us, this whole thing is not only about selling products for use. We really care deeply about what happens to our products after use, and we advocate for effective compost, recycling, and now reuse infrastructure to support a more circular economy. Our headquarters is in Boulder, Colorado, but we have a large presence nationally. And we have global reach with distribution available in North America, Europe, Australia, and Southeast Asia. So thank you so much for having me on this panel today. I really look forward to hearing what everyone says and to being a part of this collective effort to support more effective compost infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, Megan. We're going to go over to Lynn.
Thanks, Ariel. As you mentioned, I'm Lynn Dyer. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Pactiv Evergreen. We're one of the country's largest food service and food packaging manufacturers, although you probably have not heard the Pactiv Evergreen name because it's typically our customers' brands that are on the products. However, one of our brands that you probably are aware of is Greenware. So Greenware is one of the products that we manufacture. So as a large manufacturer, we do make a number of products that are both compostable, reusable, and others, recyclable and others. In the compostable packaging space, we focus on compostable plastics like PLA, for example, PLA coated paper products, molded fiber. Those are the main products that we're making in terms of the materials. So a number of different substrates. And then in terms of products, pretty much the gamut from cups and lids to straws to dinnerware to containers. So one of the big focus areas for us is, as Megan said, all of us, we're putting the products into the marketplace. So we want to try to figure out how we can actually make sure our products get composted after our customers and our customers' customers finish using them. So thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for being here also. Let's go over to John.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. I'm John Salvador, and I'm the Director of Sustainability and Stewardship here at Georgia-Pacific. Just wanted to say thank you for inviting us and Georgia-Pacific. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today could be my opinions, or mostly my opinions, not necessarily that of Georgia-Pacific. But as a company, we create a variety of products. We're a forestry company, so most of our products are paper good products. So we make things like corrugated boxes, folding cartons, packaging design for retail readiness with e-com. We also make a lot of different everyday items, such as paper cups and plates and bowls. And you'll see us in the towel tissue and napkins, paper products area. Our products are predominantly used in industries like food and beverage, personal care, and then, of course, we make e-commerce packaging. And when it comes to stewardship, well, we're definitely committed to managing our actions and managing the resources that we are entrusted to take care of. We also work closely to manage this process to ensure that the resources that we use, that we do turn those materials, or when we use them to turn it into our product set, we manage those resources properly. That's about it. Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks, John. Nate.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me and having InnoPack as part of this this panel. I'm really happy to be here and happy to be asked. So, my name is Nate Schultz. I work for InnoPack. I actually started with them 8 years ago. I started as creative director and moved into the director of sustainability role. InnoPack itself does a ton of work in the food service space and grocery space, or single-use food packaging. Our product breadth is pretty large, so we do recyclables, compostables, pretty much anything that you can imagine going into food service or grocery store applications. So we actually touch a lot of different spaces within the food packaging industry. One of the most recent strengths that we've added has been compostable products, and for the last couple of years have really focused a lot of time and energy into the compostable packaging space, because, you know, as an organization, we see value in not just recycling, but in composting when you think of the highest and best use of packaging moving forward. So just that's kind of what we do. And as far as market goes, you know, we sell mostly in North America, so US and Canada, a little bit into the Caribbean and Central America. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Nate. Let's go over to Rich. Welcome, Rich.
All right, unmute. Okay. My name is Rich Cohen. I don't come from the industry. I founded Elevate Packaging in the year 2000 as the first company dedicated exclusively to compostable packaging and labels. Our mission is a bit unique compared to many other packaging companies because it's not about packaging growth or penetrating the market with packaging, but rather our mission as a company is to eliminate plastic and to re-enrich the planet. And that's taken us on to a journey of not only focusing only on compostable materials, but also the end of life and ensuring that we've built circular compostable packaging systems. We offer a wide range of products that meet the needs of a wide range of operations throughout business, everything from warehousing to retail on the shelf packaging. Everything, as I mentioned, is 100% compostable and circular. We do that through a take-back program. So everything that Elevate sells also is taken back through our company at no cost to our customers and composted. Our offering ranges pretty much in two categories: flexible packaging and also adhesive-based products. And in the flexible packaging area, we have a wide range of stock items, but we do a large number of custom as well. Flexible packaging covers things like bags and stand-up pouches, coffee bags with valves. We also have other film-based products like food service gloves and pallet stretch wrap. On the adhesive side, we have fruit stickers and produce those PLU stickers that go on fruits and vegetables that are all compostable. We also do a wide range of printed labels, both ones that you can buy in stock or on custom printed. And often people ask what drives our rapid growth and success. And other than the typical things like outstanding quality and service, our strength is driven by establishing a vertically integrated supply chain. So our company actually we work to procure resins and films and adhesives, and we build the entire supply chain from the very beginning of the raw materials to the end customer application. We distribute nationally, and I think that's, in summary, our focus is not to make compostable packaging, but to make packaging that gets composted. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. And then let's go over to Blair.
Hi, everyone. I'm Blair Michael. I'm the circularity coordinator at Better Earth, And my role is to help ensure that compostables get composted. Better Earth is a sustainable packaging provider. We're on a mission to create compostable packaging that makes sustainability accessible and regenerative circularity achievable in the food service industry. We have a comprehensive range of 100% commercially compostable items like plates, bowls, trays, cups, cutlery, portion cups, and more, to really help empower businesses and individuals to make more sustainable choices without having to compromise on performance. Our domestic climate smart farmers fiber collection is made from native grasses grown by Tennessee farmers using regenerative agriculture practices. Our farmers fiber collection actually sequesters 1 ton of carbon per acre per year. So as a few people have mentioned already, really trying to go beyond just creating compostable packaging and ensure that we're really working towards regenerative circularity. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia, but we distribute all over the United States and other parts of the world. We work with both local distributors as well as broadliners to help make sure that sustainable packaging is more accessible. So that's a little bit about Better Earth.
Thank you.
That's great. Well, welcome everyone. Great to meet you. We have our second question, which is, I'm going to put it in the chat too. So for each of you, just talk a little bit about how your company intersects with the compostables industry. What do you think are some of the greatest opportunities created by designing and or manufacturing compostable materials? And so I'm going to start with Megan.
I forgot to unmute. That's funny. All right. So at Eco Products, as I mentioned, we sell food service products. So think single-use cups, bowls, clamshells, cutlery, and others made from renewable resources that are designed to be composted. They meet ASTM standards for compostability. Most are BPI certified, and many have been CMA approved with their field testing program as well. We intersect with the compost industry as most of our products are intended to be composted after use. So we're strong advocates for effective compost infrastructure, and we've built relationships with composters and haulers around the country in an effort to understand challenges and opportunities to compost infrastructure, especially those presented by compostable food service packaging. And then within the rest of the compostables industry, we engage quite a bit with compostable products organizations and working groups to help drive consistency and better support for composters and compost infrastructure. So now for the opportunities, which I think is a big part why many of these panelists are here and talking about this. So there are incredible climate opportunities created by designing and manufacturing compostable food service products. But just as with most waste sorting related climate benefits, it has to be done right for all of those full benefits to be achieved. So it's really important for the public to understand the differences in the uniqueness about the climate opportunity associated specifically with composting food contact packaging versus other non-food contact packaging, like some secondary packaging or retail packaging that really are more effective in traditional mechanical recycling systems. So for food contact packaging specifically, composting really is the ultimate climate and circularity solution. Behind, of course, effective reusable systems that really work for continued reuse, but we all know that's not always feasible. So when it's not, composting really is the next best option. And so let's talk about a couple of reasons why. So for composting making sense and making climate sense for single-use food contact packaging, it's really about that it makes it easier to collect food and food packaging together in one stream. It then takes that food and the compostable food packaging to compost facilities instead of sending them to landfills. And food that is sent to compost facilities instead of landfills reduces the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the disposal of food waste by more than 50%. It also creates compost out of that food, compostable products, and the other organics within that stream, instead of wasting all of the valuable resources embedded in that food and all of those other materials in a landfill. Now, I'm going to be preaching a little bit to the choir because I know that many on this call tend to already know this, but some of the other climate benefits associated with using finished compost include improved soil health, carbon sequestration, increased crop yields, but it also allows for the reduced need to manufacture and apply chemical fertilizer, which provides an additional greenhouse gas reduction opportunity and is a biodiversity supporter. Plus, when it comes to food service packaging specifically, recyclers typically do not want the food residue on products they're trying to recycle, but a composter loves that food and really wants it to support their process. So again, we believe and know that there really is a true climate and circularity opportunity and potential with designing food service packaging to be compostable. It just makes sense. But again, it's going to take the entire value chain of the process to come together to make sure that we're mitigating contamination, to make sure that everybody's aware of the benefits and we're properly supporting and funding the system. So happy to be able to work with that together with everyone.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right, Lynn.
Thank you. And thank you to Candy and Ariel for making sure that Megan went first, because we all knew that she was going to have great answers and we could often say ditto to a lot of her comments. So I will just say briefly ditto to many of the comments. And I think one of the things I'd like to just put an emphasis on is, I think typically what we see is there's a lot of attention on what's going into landfills today. And often people scream, it's packaging, packaging, packaging as a huge portion. And it's lost that food waste is the largest contributor. And that's what we should be focusing on. And obviously compostable packaging is one of those vehicles to get more of that food waste out of the landfills and into a much more valuable location. And that's back to composters, for all the reasons that Megan said. In terms of how I and the company interact with the composting industry. So I've been with Pactive Evergreen for a little over 4 years. And prior to that, I was with the Food Service Packaging Institute, which is the industry's trade association. And I started participating in the U.S. Composting Council back in 2011, I think. And it was really at a time when the food service packaging industry as a whole was trying to understand, where are we going? People want more sustainable packaging, but what does that look like? Is it recyclable? Is it compostable? So I'll be honest with you, for me, it was a learning process from 2011 on, in terms of really trying to understand what's happening in terms of the compostable packaging space. But if you're going to be talking about compostable packaging, you do need to understand the composting industry and what they're looking for, what their pain points are, how do we solve this together? And so I think that's been one of the biggest things, and we'll probably talk about it multiple times, is all the stakeholders need to be in the room together to talk about these issues so that we fully understand everything. As a company, obviously we're active in the U.S. Composting Council, Biodegradable Products Institute, a number of different partnerships where we're all working towards the same goals or very similar goals. We advocate, particularly in policy spaces, to make sure that recycling doesn't get all the love, that composting gets some of that love too. In many cases, it might be an afterthought. We want to make sure that legislators are thinking about that as well. And then I think the other thing too, from a company standpoint, one of the things we developed a couple of years ago was a zero waste guide, because we know that a lot of locations didn't necessarily understand how to move towards zero waste. They were interested in it. They were looking at both recycling and composting as options. And so we developed that free guide to put out and provide to our customers and our customers' customers. So that's where I'll stop.
That's amazing. And then if you have a link to that guide, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat if that's a resource you'd like to share. Yeah, that's great. John.
First of all, thanks, Megan and Lynn. To piggyback on them, GP, we work on sustainability in a lot of different fashions, but one of them is incorporating compostable products in our portfolio, specifically our Dixie food service products. Food service, obviously, for a lot of the same reasons that Megan had talked about earlier. But we offer food service items that are designed to break down in both commercial composting facilities, and we also focus on backyard settings as well. We ensure that these products are made from materials that meet certification standards for compostability, And of course that they're appropriately labeled to ensure that they can be composted effectively and also to reduce the impact on the environment. But for compostable food service packaging, I believe there's 4 hurdles that manufacturers are impacted by. First of all, we need to create compostable products from materials that are not only do they perform well, but they also have to meet all of these compostable standards. And then they have to be affordable for customers, right? So we run into that hurdle, and I think some of our competitors do the same. Secondly, even if we solve for these hurdles, there's a patchwork of composters that are willing to accept these products, which creates other hurdles, like our ability to label products accordingly, to let consumers know that they can compost those products that are accepted into the facilities that do accept them. I'd say third, navigating all of the different regulations and the standards for compostability across different states is clearly very complex. We have to ensure that our products meet regulatory guardrails, which frequently change. And those can cause financial issues with our manufacturing, not only for us, but also for our customers as well. And then I would say fourth, while there's a growing interest in sustainable products, widespread adoption of compostable food service items is not as fast as we would all like for it to be. But we do anticipate that the infrastructure is growing and education is going to increase in these coming years.
Thank you so much, John. Nate.
Thank you, everybody. Kind of piggybacking on what's been already said. So InnoPack, the way we kind of intersect with the compostables industry is, up to about 2022, we didn't really have much in the way of compostable packaging. And then we acquired the Stock Market and Planet Plus brands. And we've really just been building on those 2 brands. I mean, that's been a huge focus of InnoPack over the last, 2.5 years now. And just, we see the potential in the compostable packaging space. From a food waste diversion perspective, I think it's uniquely positioned in the packaging world to provide that element. As somebody pointed out before, recyclers really don't want food soiled stuff. So if you can get that out of the recycling stream as a contaminant and into a stream like the compostable stream, where it can actually, not only help divert food waste, but also create, the soil amendment that compost is for those soil health properties and all the benefits that come with it. I mean, it's really a win-win for everybody. Again, for us, it just comes down to highest and best use as we look at everything. Megan had mentioned, those secondary packages, like our OCC that we use for cases, that really needs to go into the recycling stream, not into the composting stream. So that's where you get into the communication aspect. And that's also, I think, another huge opportunity is, if you can clearly communicate that, hey, this receiving case or the shipping case really belongs in the recycling stream, and then have communication that the packaging that's inside that's used for food can then be sent to a composting facility and reliably composted. That's another opportunity, is making sure that the things that we're producing really do compost and compost well and compost within the right amounts of time. There's opportunity to gain there. And then from a labeling standpoint, that on-pack labeling that's now required in like Washington and Colorado, there's an opportunity now to, with the packaging that we're producing, educate consumers on what to do with those packages at the end of life. So I think those are some of the biggest opportunities that we have as an industry for compostable packaging right now.
That's great. Thank you, Nate. All right, Rich.
Thanks. So Elevate Packaging intersects with the compostable industry by offering a comprehensive and unique circular system, our focus is not only to support composters so they can eliminate contamination and eliminate sorting challenges, but also to our clients who are trying to solve big sustainability challenges. Our company, as I mentioned, our goal is to eliminate plastic, regardless of the application, because plastic causes pollution, microplastics, and it's been scientifically proven that there's a negative health effect, such as endocrine disruption caused by microplastics. So we see that as a very important mission. Unlike traditional packaging companies, we are definitely wired differently. If you know anything about me or looked at my LinkedIn, I don't come from the industry. I'm an environmentalist. My background's in engineering, and it's in advanced technology. But I entered this industry back in 2000 as potentially one of the first, if not the first company in this space focused on it, because I wanted to address this big problem. As an industrial engineer, I think about things in terms of solving problems. And so we don't think about this as a packaging problem, but rather a circular problem. So, and that sometimes people call us the anti-packaging packaging company, because as I mentioned earlier, Elevate doesn't just offer compostable packaging. We focus on providing packaging that gets composted, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Through that system, that process, we have effective composting rates that far exceed any industry norm. That approach ensures that the compostable products, again, whether it's food or not, doesn't matter to us. Plastic is an issue, and we will help not only provide solutions to eliminate plastic, but all those compostable materials that we're producing are part of our circular system. And that's diverting compostables from landfills, which is also a big problem. And regardless of whether it's, like I said, if it's food or not, you don't want compostables going into landfills. That's not helping the environment. So our goal is to eliminate that, re-enrich the planet, while also driving profitability for the composters. The composters, we have to remember, are a business, and we provide them a very profitable mechanism to process compost that's clean and uncontaminated from the feedstocks. The greatest opportunities in designing and manufacturing compostable materials lie in reducing plastic waste and re-enriching the planet's soil. Our innovative leadership in circular compostable packaging systems positions us as a leader for brands and generators that are looking for solutions, easy solutions. We provide them with turnkey circular packaging solutions to meet their sustainability and their EPR goals. EPR's coming on fast and furious, and any brand or generator that's ignoring the potential of the impact that EPR will have on their business is not going to be in a going to be in a good position when it comes to arrive in their legislation, wherever they are. This allows us to help those brands drive significant environmental benefits while meeting the rapidly growing demands for the market seeking these truly sustainable results. At the end of the day, Elevate Packaging is not really a packaging company. We're a results-driven company in terms of eliminating plastic waste for brands. Thanks very much.
That's great. Thank you, Rich. All right, Blair.
Yeah, so as a manufacturer and leader in the compostable products industry, Better Earth is committed to providing only 100% compostable products. Currently, over 85% of our products are BPI certified, with more going through that certification process. We also have CMA certified products as well. In terms of opportunity, compostables are made from rapidly renewable resources. I know that a lot of people have already touched on, the different environmental benefits of composting, but, really just reiterating that compostables, can reduce our dependence on fossil fuels for those single-use items, and that compostables are a catalyst for our environment, health, and our economy. So those third-party certified compostables are a safe and sustainable alternative to those single-use plastics. Roughly 1/3 of our landfills are food scraps, and roughly another third is packaging. So compostables can help us divert both wasted food and plastic pollution. From consumers and legislative momentum, we're seeing this growing market educate and advocate for more composting infrastructure. Packaging is a key touch point that people interact with multiple times a day. And the number one question that we get when someone holds compostable packaging is, how do I compost it? So it begins those conversations around composting and local sustainable food systems. Through standardized labeling and custom print, we can help educate and advocate for composting, and Better Earth can support your sustainability, branding, and operational needs through our domestic custom print capabilities. So I would say that that's really one of the areas where Better Earth stands out, is through utilizing that custom print, both on the operational side as well as that educational advocacy side.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. Great context, everybody. Number 3 question is, what have been some of the greatest challenges your organization has dealt with when it comes to designing or manufacturing compostable materials? I'll put this in the chat, and let's go back up to the top with Megan.
All right, thank you. So with this question, in preparing for it, we read it very specifically to the designing and manufacturing of compostable materials, and not necessarily to the recovery, which obviously the recovery of these products has their own set, very large set of challenges that we could discuss, basically at a separate time, but we're going to focus mostly on that designing and manufacturing as stated in the question. So for the designing and manufacturing of compostable food service products, we are making these products out of raw materials that are slightly newer to the market, interestingly enough, than some of their legacy counterparts. So naturally, some challenges will come with this process. So here we're going to address the challenges related to performance limitations, labeling limitations, the regulatory landscape, and costs. So with performance limitations, just an example with the PLA. So PLA is designed to act like traditional fossil fuel-based resins in a service setting, but it's also designed to be able to fully biodegrade in high temperatures and microbes at a commercial compost facility. So because of this, there are some performance limitations, and some of these items are limited to like cold liquids or cold foods. Now we also have CPLA, which is crystallized PLA, which is a little bit newer to the market than regular PLA, and it's a little bit more durable for some of those hot foods and liquids, but it can't be used in all applications. And then when we consider something like molded fiber, so molded fiber molded fiber requires a grease-resistant barrier to keep it from leaking. Unfortunately, traditionally, added PFAS was used as this grease resistance barrier in molded fiber products. And now that we all understand the concerns with PFAS, we've innovated to have that barrier available without the use of added PFAS. But of course, it doesn't perform as well as its previous version. So continuous innovation is required on this front, which can be challenging when considering cost and performance and product safety. And then we'll move on to labeling limitations. So we obviously need to label products effectively to inform consumers of what they are, which end of life stream they belong in, how to properly sort, and of course, also to try and keep non-compostable products out of compost piles. But there are definitely technology and space limitations on products. So manufacturing technology limitations, but also space limitations on product that limit our ability to effectively label all of the messages that we'd like to be able to give the consumer about the product. We'll move into the regulatory landscape. So while we are huge advocates for effective labeling, for many reasons that we all probably can agree on, some specific requirements for labeling limit our ability to be able to effectively communicate other important things that we want to, like contamination mitigation. And then, of course, there's costs. So doing all of this in a way that's going to keep everything cost competitive, especially in relation to other legacy materials that Rich is referring to a lot. So a lot of traditional products and plastics in this space So for those kinds of products, their manufacturing process and their value chain has already been optimized, right? So they can achieve economies of scale that lead to more effective cost reduction that a lot of these emerging materials that I've referenced in this example for products made from renewable resources that are designed to be composted haven't met yet. So this creates a big challenge for us in not only being able to innovate in the way that we want to provide more climate and planet friendly products, but to also be able to, you know, convince the market to swap to these materials and to be able to provide them to the market in a cost-effective way. So all of those challenges come together in support of that. And if this was intended to talk about challenges with recovery, maybe we can touch that at the end, because we obviously have a couple of moments for that, or of items for that, but we're good for now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll try to come back to that if we have time. Let's go over to Lynn.
Thanks. And again, ditto to everything that Megan said. But one thing that I want to raise that I think is really critical and good for us to understand, and our good friend Susan Toman, who I'm sure is on the call, you know, she has talked often about how composting is a manufacturing process, just like making a piece of package is a manufacturing process. You have to understand that process. Well, when that manufacturing process changes, it's harder for us to design products. So one of the things that we're starting to see and recognize is that there are shorter and shorter timeframes when the composters are processing the compostable packaging and other materials. And so many of our products have been designed to biodegrade and to become compost in a much longer time period than there are today. And as that time frame gets shorter and shorter and shorter, we have to figure out how do we design packaging to make sure it's going to work well in those composters' different facilities. So recognizing that we have different manufacturing facilities, but so do composters. How do we align those to make sure that we're giving the right feedstock to the composters that is actually going to work in those facilities? I would say that's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now. So understanding where the composting industry is going so that we can design packaging to match that is really critical for us and all of us on the call.
Thank you, Lynn. Let's go over to John.
Yeah. Greatest challenges, as mentioned earlier, biggest challenges to develop compostable products made from materials that meet performance standards for efficacy and durability, while also meeting compostability standards, and then, of course, being affordable for our customers, and in that way they are purchasing. Oftentimes, these materials are difficult to source at scale. They don't meet certification standards, or they might not transition well into the products that we need them to be developed in. We've also had to deal a lot with regulatory guidelines that affect the costs when it comes to sourcing, manufacturing, and labeling. People who draft these laws across our country are generally have a good intentions and do a good job covering all the many aspects of compostability, but it's challenging to create a bill that fully addresses all the complexities involved. Legislation often needs to include specific methods and requirements to ensure that everyone's held accountable. But at the same time, it's important for that these laws, they do allow for innovation and for adjustments when necessary.
Great. Thank you, John. Nate.
Yeah, I'm actually going to start kind of piggybacking on what John was just saying. Yeah, when it comes to legislation, and I mean, some of it's just so aggressive so quickly that it's not allowing for innovation. I mean, the plastics industry has been around for what, 100, 150 years. And now you're basically asking compostable product manufacturing to pivot in the span of 5-10 years and try to catch up with a scaled solutions for compostable packaging. And I mean, that's all of us here on this panel. I mean, we're working very hard to do that, but scalability is a problem. And there are materials out there that exist today that are probably better than what we're using right now. And we're looking at them. I'm sure all the other panelists are looking at them too. But when it comes to cost, compostable products are already more expensive than your traditional products. So market adoption becomes an issue. And that's the thing, is that's one of our biggest challenges, is just market adoption. You know, customers come to us all the time and say, well, why should I spend more? And we can go into a litany of reasons why you should. You know, this is why you should support the compostable packaging space and all of that. So that's a big challenge for us. You know, the other big challenge is labeling. I mean, it was mentioned there, technology is limited sometimes. You know, we do what we can with on pack labeling, but space is a constraint. You know, I tell customers all the time, like, if you want to custom print something or custom brand something that's a compostable product, it really needs to be a minimalistic approach. Like, composting is about minimalism. That's, you know, more my opinion, probably a lot of other people's, but, you know, you shouldn't be flood coating a product. So those are just inks and all that, you know, are now going into the composting system that, you know, may contain heavy metals or whatever, change the quality of the compost. So it's really getting people on board with that movement. And then with that, you know, there is certification. So we have most of our products, all of our products are BPI certified. We don't have anything that would be soft claim compostable. Most of those products are also CMA certified, with the exception of fiber, which I know is an issue with CMA certification. But for us, you know, we're relatively a small company. And so the cost of certification, especially when you're doing two different ones to satisfy two different markets, you know, those costs add up when it comes to R&D, which then takes away money from, you know, the R&D that we can put forward to, you know, maybe newer materials, or working with newer materials that, you know, might compost a little bit better. And then, you know, the other big challenge is really composter adoption. You know, we're all trying to do the best possible thing. And the fact that, you know, a lot of composters are kind of using depackaging equipment to pull that out, you know, kind of hurts my heart a little bit. But I understand it's a contamination issue. So.
Thank you, Nate. Rich.
Yeah, so I'd say, ironically, one of the greatest challenges that we face is not at all in the engineering of these very, very complex, high performance compostable solutions. Now we do have an advantage. We've been doing it since 2000. And so we have some very, very complicated items that have been difficult for others to figure out, such as flexible packaging and laminated structures, and as well as adhesive labels. But our greatest challenge has actually been overcoming the legacy concepts of packaging manufacture and waste management. Those industries are very antiquated, and it was a model, those two structures, that was a model that worked before we had this climate change challenge. Traditional recycling, as we see already, especially of plastics, has proven to be largely ineffective, with recycling rates of plastic only around an unacceptable 9%. And that's with 50 years or so of development and such a massive investment and penetration. To think that that same infrastructure can potentially even have a chance at managing compostables is ridiculous. It's impossible to use that same process, that same structure, to get better results. And why is that? If we can't do recycling with that same method, contamination for compostables is much, much greater. And we see that because we see the composters kicking out packaging because of this challenge. So composting is facing significant hurdles, primarily due to contamination and sorting issues. That's where the focus needs to be. These issues have led to legislative bans, and most recently I was reading about these bans in Europe, where they're no longer allowing compostables. And in the USA, we see us on that same path. And that's the warning signal for everyone here in this group. We've already moved from compostable products to focus only on a food packaging focus. That was a really misdirected approach because it was looking at symptoms, not the system. And even still, that we've made this move, it's eminent that the next step is that this food packaging focus is going to fail as well, because already composters are kicking out all packaging. They're saying even if you limit it to only coming along with the food, we are still seeing contamination, and we are no longer going to take any packaging, food or not. So that very narrow view is a symptom-based focus. As an engineer, I look at solving this problem with setting the problem set first and looking at the holistic solution. So another major challenge I'd say is ensuring that compost sites can accept all the products. Each compost site is like a fingerprint. Just because it worked at one site or it's in a laboratory with some kind of certification doesn't mean it's going to effectively work on the site in the field. And we've proven that. There's quite a bit of data. So to ignore the fact that every composter deserves to be individually respected for their process and their methods and the way they compost is a massive miss when we look at creating a solution that's going to work. Our solution has been to develop here to a comprehensive integrated circular system that ensures all compostable materials, regardless of what they're used for, are properly sorted and composted. One of the composters came to me and she said something pretty lucid, which I think everyone should think about. She said, the microbes don't discriminate between whether it was used for food or anything else. It doesn't matter what that material was used for. This holistic turnkey approach makes it seamless for brands and generators to on-ramp to a truly circular compost system. And it adds real significant value to the brand, the communities, the composters, and the real winner in this is the planet and all the living beings by eliminating plastics and microplastics. Thank you.
Beautifully said, Rich. The urgency in this conversation is so pertinent, and that's why we are doing this work and coming together. So let's go to Blair.
Thanks. Yeah, so along the same lines of what many of the other panelists have said, designing and manufacturing compostable food service packaging involves developing that innovative product design that supports the ease of operators as well as proper disposal and existing manufacturing equipment. And so this looks like making sure that our packaging holds up to a variety of food applications, is durable and has reliable barrier properties, especially as the industry moves away from PFAS. Meeting those strict compostability standards, holding down those raw material and production costs to be comparable to those incumbent products that are non-compostable. And then balancing the performance benefits with the overall environmental footprint. So kind of taking all of these things into account and meeting and exceeding those challenges requires design innovation, strategic partnerships across the value chain, and continuous improvement in the production processes to make sure that compostable food service packaging is both a viable and sustainable alternative. And then, I think Lynn touched on a critical conversation that we need to be collaborating on between the composting industry and compostable packaging industry. And that's understanding, what technologies are available and most popular and why. Understanding those real world scenarios like Rich was just mentioning, and innovations coming down the pipeline, both on the substrates and the compostable packaging industry side, as well as on the composting side. I think Lynn's example, was perfect, that our industry, the compostable packaging industry, currently operates, with that third-party certification standard of that 90 to 180 day disintegration at a commercial composting facility. But what we're seeing is more and more composters moving towards that ASP technology which has much quicker turn times. So how can we as an industry, innovate to meet those quicker processing and composting times? And at the end of the day, compostable packaging companies' job is to design compostable packaging that works for both customers and composters. We want it to break down, just not in our lap while we are eating. So coming together, as industries to find that balanced middle point is critical moving forward.
Thanks, Blair.
Yeah, amazing spectrum of all of the different challenges currently navigated and have to be taken into consideration when really thinking about, how can the system really optimize and work better and honor the intentions of all of the investments that everybody is putting into these processes and into the bigger picture, which is, what is the highest, best use of materials in general, and how do we activate circularity, in all of these systems. And so our fourth and final question, at least for now, depends on how quickly we get through this, is for each of you, what should other stakeholders in this supply system, what should other stakeholders in the system, in the supply chain, the solid waste management system, compost manufacturers, regulators, so all of the other stakeholders in the system, what should they take into consideration when problem solving around all the issues that you've raised? What, from your perspectives, do you think would be the most helpful? And so we're going to start with Megan.
All right, thank you. So I have a couple of things to leave everyone with for this. So similar to what we discussed earlier with knowing and really truly understanding the climate opportunity associated with compostable food service packaging, or not food service, food contact packaging. It'd be really helpful for everyone in the entire value chain to understand that value of composting. And if they did, it seems like it would be easier to create a more systems-based approach, like what we're trying to do here, to be able to provide more funding, possibly support more effective communication and education to mitigate contamination, be able to manufacture compost and then purchase and use finished compost for the full climate benefit of that entire system. So it'd be really helpful just for everyone to have that baseline understanding to be able to then support some of these other things. So additionally, I think it's helpful for others to understand that manufacturing and effective labeling is a lot harder than it looks, and that we want to be able to try as hard as we can. We just need to be able to make sure to pull all the pieces together to make sure that we're not getting pressure to communicate for certain things like consumer protection over more, maybe more important things for the system, like contamination mitigation or climate support. It'd also be helpful for others to understand how much procurement and distribution impacts this system and how it works. So in order to be able to address contamination for compost streams, we really need accountability at procurement and distribution levels to drive a clean stream all the way through the system. Contamination into a system due to ineffective procurement and or distribution will only increase the risk of contamination that arrives at a compost facility, which increases the likelihood that food and compostable products may end up going to a landfill instead of getting composted. And then just like what we're doing here with the future search work, we need to be able to bring all the stakeholders together across the entire value chain to be able to solve pressing issues and allow the climate opportunities of effective compost infrastructure and compostable products all together to be able to shine. So thanks everyone for your time. It's been a pleasure to be able to join this panel, and I've really enjoyed listening to what everyone else has to say as well.
Thank you so much, Megan. Lynn.
Thank you. I want to piggyback on a comment that Megan had talked about, and that's specifically related to procurement. I think many of us here on the call today understand the value of compostable packaging. They want to do the right thing. They recognize that composting is a manufacturing process that needs good feedstocks. I think one of the things that is a challenge is, and I saw it in the chat, the term bad actors. There are bad actors out there. I don't know how to squash them, but we need to figure that out. And I can provide some examples. You know, one of the things that one of the beauties of Pactive Evergreen is because we are such a large organization, we have a team of material scientists and laboratories that can test competitors' products. And that's a great opportunity to be able to do that. We have relationships with our customers who will come to us and say, hey, somebody's trying to sell me this agave widget. You know, they say it's compostable, you know, but I'm just not sure about it. We test it and it's made of polypropylene. Or we have somebody who says, oh, well, you got this wonderful new product that's made out of seashells. Oh, and it's compostable. And, you know, we test it and no, that's not really the case. A more recent example was a product that was being in the marketplace labeled as home compostable with a certain certification. We couldn't track down the certification. We tested the product, and in a shocking development, it had a polyethylene coating on that paper cup. So the reality is those examples are out in the marketplace. So we have to figure out, how do we stop that? And I think one of the big parts of the contamination piece is the responsibility and the role that procurement teams play within the distributor community or food service operators or whoever they happen to be, suppliers, to make sure that, hey, if somebody's trying to sell you a product that is super cheap and seems to be cheaper than anything else into the marketplace, is it too good to be true? Maybe it's a good opportunity to take a step back and ask for those certifications. Make sure the certifications are correct, and make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can do to put good feedstock into the system. That's what I end with.
Yeah, those are such good points. And I know past panelists have called this the brown washing of the system. And you know, what you're talking about, just the ability to test and confirm and ask for certifications, like, so important. All right, John.
So in my role, I work a lot with legislation and following legislation. So my perspective, so my answers are going to be a little bit swayed on those perspectives. I do want to say that the 2 points. First, compostable products like recyclable products they're crucial for the circular economy as they contribute to waste reduction and to environmental protection. Like recyclables, they rely on what we've talked about: consumer behavior, proper infrastructure, supportive policies to realize their full potential in creating a more sustainable and a more circular system. And my second point, Lynn kind of hits on this with bad actors, is I think it's important to know for everyone to know that there are many manufacturers like the ones you're hearing today that are working diligently to provide consumers with those sustainable solutions for disposable products, which do promote a circular economy. You know, I know at GP, we're always experimenting and coming up with new ways to create more value while, you know, at the same time having to reduce resources and use fewer resources. So we are working in that fashion. And we absolutely do seek win-win outcomes with our customers, with our suppliers, in the communities that we work in, and then, of course, all of the other key stakeholder groups as well. So those are the 2 points that I would like to come across with.
That's great. Thank you so much, Nate.
The one thing I think for this question I want people to know is that we are all trying. We're all working hard. We are all trying to innovate and basically catch up. I hate to even say catch up, because that's even a terrible way to put it, but just trying to keep pace with legislation and needs, right? We're trying as hard as we can. I mean, you know, they asked us to label everything. You know, we're still working on that as a company. You know, at InnoPac, just because technology is not there to actually label everything. But we're working, trying to find new solutions. We're working hard at labeling. We're working hard on communicating and educating and telling people, you know, how to compost things. You know, one of the things that I would ask, you know, regulators and legislators to do is help us build infrastructure. Help us, you know, gain that bandwidth where compostables can really gain traction in the marketplace, because you're kind of circling back to the challenge of, what do I do with this stuff, or why should I buy compostables? That's a quick follow-up is, hey, there's no composting facility in my area. Why should I buy this? Right. And the more infrastructure we can build through help with regulators and legislators, the more compostable product can be adopted, the more they scale, the cheaper they get. You get your economies of scale. And then as far as the bad actors thing, it's one of those where if you see something that's labeled compostable, and that's the only words you see, the only language you see, I tell people this all the time with recyclables: when in doubt, throw it out. Don't throw it in a bin if you don't have a third-party certification, or a green bin if you don't have a third-party certification. And that's where certifications really, really help. I was actually just in an airport last week and got a compostable cutlery kit that was just marked compostable. It had a green leaf and word on it, and it's just like, yeah, that this is not. It felt like polypropylene. The bag felt like polystyrene. So it's like, what do you do with it? Well, I threw it out.
That's great. Thank you so much, Nate. Rich.
Stakeholders in the supply chain, the solid waste management system, compost manufacturers and regulators should consider the full cycle of compostable materials from production to composting. And I think there are 4 key considerations. The first, and maybe the biggest, is contamination and sorting. That seems to come up over and over and over here. So developing better methods for reducing contamination and improving sorting processes at compost sites is critical. The Compost Stewardship Institute, which I'm a co-founder of, handles all of Elevate Packaging's compost certifications, as well as the very, very critical reverse logistics and collection systems that collects, sorts, and then gets all those materials composted through a network of composters in CMA and CSI's national network of composters. And it does it in a very profitable manner, profitable for composters as well, enabling the composters, of course, then to drive higher profitability at less cost. This is a successful, working, and proven solution available now for every packaging manufacturer, generator, and composter. So I think that is probably the number one issue. The other 3, I think, are legislation and regulation that's come up before. We do need policymakers to support legislation that's promoting compostable products and infrastructure, rather than imposing bans that stifle innovation. Education and awareness. We need to increase public awareness about the benefits and the proper disposal of compostable products. And then last, I'd say, is collaboration and integration. And that's where we are today here with this group. Stakeholders must work together to create an integrated system that supports a circular economy model that includes developing partnerships that ensure compostable products are accepted and properly processed at compost sites. In summary, I'd say the most helpful approach is what we're doing right here. It's here with Future Search, is to adopt a problem solving and a system thinking mindset, where all stakeholders of the circular supply chain can work cohesively towards a common goal of the goal being effective, measurable sustainability impact. I really stress the words effective and measurable, because if your compostable packaging is not getting composted and it's headed to a landfill, it's effectively expensive trash. This holistic approach ensures that each step from material design to end-of-life processing contributes to a circular economy that actually benefits our environment. Thank you.
That's very much. Thank you. All right, Blair, take us home.
Yeah, so just to continue to piggyback off what the other panelists have said, standard operating procedures at composting facilities, standardized labeling, and incorporating substrates that perform best in compost piles. There's a ton of innovations out there in the market and research being done, like what is outlined in the Closed Loop Partners recent disintegration report that was launched this spring that had, some really good information in there. But the compostable packaging industry has come a long way for, through innovations, and every year there's more and more. But, outside of our industry, we also need to be educating policymakers on the benefits of composting, like extending the life of landfills, available funding, and permitting and zoning constraints that affect the growth of composting. And then also educating policymakers on market capabilities and composting capacity before passing legislation. We're starting to see more and more kind of cart before the horse scenarios. So, I think a few people have touched on it, but making sure that there is the market capabilities to support the legislation that's being passed. And then, as I mentioned, that composting infrastructure to then process those materials, or that influx of compostable materials. And by working closely with every member of the value chain, Better Earth's commitment extends beyond just providing compostable packaging. We're partnering with farmers and customers and composters and other stakeholders to actively close the loop and help contribute to the circular economy from field to fork to field. So, excited to be a part of this discussion, this series, and seeing these stakeholders coming together and having these conversations, and excited to see, more of this series and more of these conversations between different stakeholder groups.
It's so great. Well, and just want to share such a deep appreciation for all the panelists. One of the things that Megan brought up earlier was, if there's an opportunity to talk about the challenges with recovery. And so we wanted to give a little bit of time to that and do what Linda in the past has called a lightning round. And so we're going to do a really quick round around the question of, from where you sit, from what you've seen, from your experience and all the hats that you wear, what are some of the challenges that you've seen with recovery of these compostable materials? And so, Megan, I don't know if you want to kick us off, but plan for about a minute each.
Sure. I'll hop in really quick, bullet point style. So it's action or access, acceptance, collection, processing, and market demand is the whole entire system. So being able to have effective compost infrastructure requires, of course, contamination mitigation on the front end, funding, which requires consistent education, not only education about the why, but the how. The regulatory landscape is, even though it's trying to support the system, when it doesn't fully understand the entire system together, it can provide very challenging roadblocks. Sometimes actually like misinformation can be a really big challenge with recovery of these products. And then similar to what Lynn and a lot of other people were saying is other bad actors that are out there that aren't doing the right thing with labeling and aren't being a true, climate and compostable products advocate. They're kind of ruining for everyone else. So I'll stop there and move on. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Lynn.
So I would say, to add on to everything that that Megan has said, I think consumer engagement. We can create compostable packaging, we can support the expansion of the composting infrastructure, but unless we get the consumer to actually put that compostable packaging in the right bin, we've done everything for nothing. And that's not unique to composting. The example that I like to provide is something like PET water bottles, which has something like 99% access across the United States. And yet the recovery rate for PET water bottles, and I don't make them, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's in the 30% range. So if you've got a product that is absolutely recyclable, consumers should be able to recycle it anywhere they go, and yet only a third of those are actually recycled, then that speaks to the challenge, or one of the challenges that we're facing. So consumer engagement, how do we get them to do the right thing? That's what's one of the critical things, most critical things.
That's great. Thank you, Lynn. John.
Yeah, I'm going to say I agree. I think consumer education, and then just the awareness of where things can and cannot be composted. And I, as I say this, I think there's a lot of confusion because it's the availability is such a patchwork system. And even myself, in going to association meetings, you hear from one set of composters that say that compostable packaging absolutely can be composted. There's no reason why it can't. And then you go to another meeting, you have other composters that say, we don't accept this. It doesn't compost. So even within our own industry, I think there's a lot of obviously different opinions, different reasons why they would say what they would say, but I can completely understand why consumers are confused, because at the same time, within our own industry, we hear different comments.
That's a great point. Nate.
Yeah, access is the biggest one for me. It's absolutely access. You know, I mean, in Columbus, I actually had composting service that came to my door once a week and picked up a 3-gallon pail. It was really nice, and it was relatively inexpensive, but it's something I had to seek out and pay for on my own. You know, having curbside access like you would recycling, I think, you know, increasing that type of access would be hugely helpful. And then on the flip side of that, you know, in trying to guard against contamination, which is, you know, obviously one of the biggest issues, is holding recyclable products. And since we sell recyclable products, I'm going to kind of kick myself for saying this, holding recyclable products to the same labeling standards that compostables are. You know, you should be able to clearly identify a compostable versus a recyclable. And it shouldn't just be about, this one's labeled, this one's not. There should be labeling standards on both sides. And then, yeah, you know, again, I think Lynn hit it perfectly. Just consumer engagement and education, hugely important. And that, I mean, that's on the recycling side and the composting side, but especially with compostables because it's so new to a lot of people.
And there's a Nate, you're talking about labeling. Would you say lookalikes are also part of the challenge?
Correct. I mean, if you take a PLA cold cup and put it next to a PET cold cup, if you're not looking at the resin ID code, you're not going to know.
Okay.
I mean, they're exactly the same. So, you know, if the compostable has a green stripe on it, which, you know, it has to now, you know, maybe blue stripe or black stripe or whatever. And then, you know, I think Washington got it right. You know, and I think Colorado did the same thing where it's, you know, if you're a recyclable product, you can't mark it with, you know, green stripe and green pattern or brown stripe and brown pattern. So that helps, but I think having recyclables held to the same kind of standards for labeling would be helpful as well.
That's great.
Yeah, when I approach things, I'm a systems thinker. So I start there. And so with this, I look at a problem solving approach. So initially, when it comes to recovery, I would lay that out in terms of a new problem and then solve it in a very bespoke and unique way. And when I've done that exercise, I did that about 5 years ago. What I found with divorcing yourself, it takes a lot of discipline, especially for the legacy people in the industry, because you want to divorce yourself from what you know and what's been done. And that takes self-awareness and discipline. But when you do that, if you go through that exercise and you actually solve that problem in a really unique way, when we did it, we found out that we don't land with the previous legacy infrastructure, which is what was established before with the packaging manufacturer and the waste industry. We find that doesn't work. And I think we've proven that also, but I think people have their heads in the sand about it because the system that was put in place by the waste industry for something of value that we want to reprocess, which is recycling, isn't working. And it can't work. It'll never work. And to try to apply that same system again to this newer, more difficult problem of composting is simply impractical. So I think when you start there, if you start at that point, I think you'll come to the conclusion that that approach that we've used from 50 years ago is antiquated, out of touch, and frankly, ineffective. So Now,
Rich,
this
I
is
want to
not
make
a
sure
new,
Blair has enough time too, so.
oh, go
Yeah,
ahead
yeah,
then.
no, that's okay. I just, if you have a last thought, that's great. And then I'm going to pivot to Blair.
I'll leave it with that. I hope
Okay.
that's enough food for thought.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. All right, Blair.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, so I would just say, two things really, everybody's touched on, we've kind of had a wide variety of responses. I think more studies and standard operating procedures on incorporating food contact compostable packaging at composting facilities. We hear contradicting studies, standards, testimonies, and more. I think at Compost 2024, we started really to begin to see some exciting, more, kind of studies and standards and things like that coming out that really focus on that incorporation of compostables into composting facilities to help inform both industries. And then I think also supporting the end market of compost to support the viability of the composting industry. At Better Earth, we don't want to sit around and wait on EPR bills. We very much believe it's our responsibility to be supporting the industry that supports us. And so once again, truly supporting that end market and really creating those closed loop systems. Oop, I think you're on mute, Candy.
Thank you. So Blair, you just created the perfect transition because what is next? We're actually going to talk about closing the circle for compost. And so the next discovery workshop is about is end users, the large end users, large scale application, what it takes and all the different to create compost that's acceptable for some of the large end users and application. We're talking about agriculture, we're talking about Department of Transportation, we're talking about green infrastructure, and looking at both from the composter side, what are all the different regulations that they have to meet in order to prepare for that marketplace. And so that is coming up in a couple of weeks on July 11th. We will have this video up on the YouTube site later today. So if you want to share this with others, that is easy to share. You've got the link to the project YouTube site in the chat. If these are free and they're welcome, anybody can join. You can share the RSVP link and folks can sign up for the whole series. And so this was number 7. Next is number 8. We have 13 in the series, which will wrap up in early September. I'm so incredibly grateful for each of the panelists, what you shared today, everything that you brought into this space and the conversation. Thank you everybody who attended and for being here and all of the great conversation in the chat and the questions posed in the chat. What Ariel and I will do next is collect those questions and then share those with our panelists, create a question and answer response sheet and share that back out with the group. And so again, a deep appreciation, so much respect for what was shared today and everything that everybody brought to the table. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Ariel or I. We put our email in the chat and looking forward to seeing everybody at the next Discovery Workshop. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.